Well, I think one of the things that we are really excited by is the recognition that diseases such as asthma and COPD are really complex syndromes with many different types of diseases or traits that define the disease rather than being a single disease, which will explain why we have responders and non-responders for the current therapies and gives us hope that we'll be able to devise or define particular drugs that will hit those subsets of patients. And I think the real drive for us now is to find easily accessible biomarkers that help us to describe those particular patients. I think the real challenge for us in the asthma field is the patients with severe asthma that don't have the classic Th2 or T2 driven disease. So these are not just non-eosinophilic patients. There's a whole range of patients where we don't have treatments that work currently. The major treatments in development are really targeted towards T2 asthma. So there's between 40 to 60% of patients, depending on which study you look at, who we have no currently available treatment. There's no treatments being developed, or at least in the pipelines from these companies. These are going to be the challenge for those patients because they cost a huge amount in healthcare, and for patients, we really need to find something that we can do to help them in their daily life. I think this really follows on to those unmet needs in the non-T2 asthma. We're starting to define subtypes of disease which may have particular driver markers or pathways, and it's understanding these pathways that I think is going to provide us with the opportunities for new therapeutic drugs to treat these patients. And as I said before, this is essential if we're going to improve the life of these patients. I've really enjoyed some sessions on the pathophysiology of severe asthma, and this was a key symposia yesterday morning, right at the start of the session, which was a joint Canadian Thoracic Society and European Respiratory Society meeting on severe asthma with experts from both Europe and Canada, sharing their data on new pathological mechanisms that may give us new drugs, citing areas such as T1 type asthma that people hadn't thought of as being important, coming up in both Canadian and European studies, which suggests that this is a really true, consistent phenotype that may be very important for the very severe asthmatic patient. I think respiratory medicine is at really exciting times across many fields, not just in relation to asthma and COPD, which are my particular interest, but across the board. We are beginning to realize that there are particular subtypes that can be targeted by new drugs. We're having new drugs coming up in some areas that are transforming the lives of patients, but also the fact that we are then finding there are patients who don't respond, and these give us a huge new area of interest. And I think this is it's going to be the fun times for young researchers to be engaged in respiratory medicine.